Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Maharaj, please accept my most humble obeisances, Maharaj. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Hare Krishna to all the devotees. Today we are extremely fortunate to have the association of His Holiness Giriraja Swami Maharaj. Hari Hari Bol. As such, today is a very auspicious festival, Pushya Abhishek. So this festival has become more auspicious because today we'll have a super feast for our ears, hearing festival, Shravan Utsav, and we'll be hearing from His Holiness Giriraja Swami Maharaj. Just a small brief introduction of Maharaj. Maharaj appeared in US, and he was the only son of a very famous lawyer in Chicago. And he came in contact with his Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada in 1969. And then he joined the Prabhupada's movement. And Maharaj then came to India along with Srila Prabhupada. And in 1972, Maharaj was appointed by Prabhupada to be the president of ISKCON Bombay. It's a historical temple. And recently also Maharaj launched a book, I'll Build a Temple for You, the Juhu story. We all know the kind of struggle Prabhupada went through. And it's a very historical story and very exciting and scintillating account by Srila Maharaj. That book is wonderful. And Maharaj is also made the trustee of Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. And we all know that Maharaj is also was instrumental in building of Bhaktivedanta Ashram in Govardhan. And he also was he led the development of Kirtan Ashram for women and Bhaktivedanta Hospice in Vrindavan. Maharaj has been teaching in VIHE also and MIHE also. And in the last pastimes of Srila Prabhupada, Maharajas with Srila Prabhupada. And we all know the wonderful anecdotes Maharaj has. Maharaj was very, very intimate with Srila Prabhupada, one of the very dear disciples of Srila Prabhupada. And Maharaj has written many books. One of the many books are Watering the Seed, Many Moons, and then Death and Dying, Life's Final Exam from Vedic Perspective. And the last book is I'll Build You a Temple, the Juhu story. So, and Maharaj is known for his austerities, wonderful sadhana, very loving relationship with the devotees, and his dedication and loyalty to Srila Prabhupada. So today we have chosen a topic, diving deep in Krishna consciousness. And there can be no other better personality than Maharaj himself to speak on this topic. So we'll be really enlivened to hear from Maharaj. And Maharaj came to Panjabi Bagh around 4 years back when his book was launched, Watering the Seed. Since then, we have been eagerly looking forward to hear from Maharaj. So we are totally blessed today. And thank you so much, Maharaj, for accepting our request. So I'll request all the devotees to take the best advantage of this wonderful opportunity and hear very, very attentively from Maharaj. And whatever questions you have, don't shy away. Make full use of this opportunity. And because this is a very important topic for all the practicing devotees, so we can take full advantage of Maharaj association. And whatever questions you have, we can ask Maharaj after the class. And now I'll request Maharaj to start the class. And thank you so much to all the devotees, and especially to Maharaj. Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Maharaj, you have been ISKCON Panjabi Bagh live, like you have been watched by all the devotees all over the world on our YouTube channel also, and on this Zoom link also. Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you. So I will begin by singing the Mangala Prayers and leading a short kirtan. And then I will speak on a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam that will give us the idea how to dive deep into Krishna consciousness.
Thank you.
Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vidam Sam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabdutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Cha Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachahine Nirvishesha Shamyavadi Paschakhyade Shatarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Sri Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Srila Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Srila Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Pariprajakacharya Stotra Sri Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramhansa Pariprajakacharya Stotra Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. We shall read from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8. Prayers by Queen Kunti. Text 26. Janmaishvarya Shuta Shri Bir Edamana Madapuman Naivarhatya Bidatum Vai Tuam Akinchana Gocharam Janmaishwarya Shuta Shri Bir Edamana Madapuman Naivarhatya Bidatum Vai Tuam Akinchana Gocharam. Janma, birth. Aishwarya, opulence. Shruta, education. Shribi, by the possession of beauty. Edamana, progressively increasing. Madha, intoxication. Puman, the human being. Na, never. Eva, ever. Arhati, deserves. Adi, datum, to address in feeling. Vai, certainly. Twam, you. Akinchana gocharam, one who is approached easily by the materially exhausted man. Translation. My Lord, your lordship can be easily approached, but only by those who are materially exhausted. One who is on the path of material progress, trying to improve himself with respectable parentage, great opulence, high education, and bodily beauty, cannot approach you with sincere feeling. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Being materially advanced means taking birth in an aristocratic family and possessing great wealth, an education, and attractive personal beauty. All materialistic men are mad after possessing all these material opulences, and this is known as the advancement of material civilization. But the result is that by possessing all these material assets, one becomes artificially puffed up, intoxicated by such temporary positions. So I will be speaking as I read the purport, so it may not be so useful from now on to have the purport on the screen. There'll be a lot of back and forth. So in this verse, there are many important words. Practically every word is important. And the word madha means intoxication. When someone is intoxicated, he does not know what is what. Srila Prabhupada gives the example that a man may be lying intoxicated on the footpath, on the sidewalk, and if you ask him, he'll say he's fine, he's happy, because he's intoxicated. He doesn't know what is what. And when an ordinary person has material opulences, Janma, high birth, Aishwarya, opulence, Shruta, education, and Shri, beauty, he becomes intoxicated, thinking that he is, someone very important and very valuable. And he does not have the humility that is required to actually approach God and serve him in devotional service. So it is said that a pauper is proud of his penny. However little a person may have, still he thinks he has something. In the last line, we have the word akinchana. Kinchana means something, and akinchana means without something, without anything. And a related word which has the same meaning is niskinchana. Lord Chaitanya used that word in a very significant prayer. Niskinchana Bhagavat Bhajan Mukhasya. Basically saying that one who is niskinchana, who has nothing, he can cross over the ocean of repeated births and deaths. Now, materially, we might think that having nothing is horrible. How can we live if we don't have anything? But this akinchana, without having anything, can be taken in two ways. One is one literally has nothing. And there are sadhus in Vrindavan, at Govardhan, I know, they practically have nothing, akinchana. But the other meaning is that he has no sense of false proprietorship. We have many big temples all over the world. Punjabi Bagh is one, and Juhu, Mumbai is another, and there's so many. But those temples are for Krishna and Krishna service. As Srila Prabhupada said, if he were just to stay in his small grass hut in Mayapur, those of you who have been to Mayapur have seen that small grass hut, which was used by Srila Prabhupada. And later, when they built, the first building, which was quite opulent then, especially in Mayapur with marble floors, big verandas, Srila Prabhupada said, actually, I preferred to live in the grass hut, which was in the mode of goodness, this big building with all the marbles in the mode of passion. But if I lived in the grass hut, no one would come. But here they come, and I have an opportunity to help them, to preach and deliver them the knowledge of Krishna consciousness. So personally, a devotee has no interest in an opulent residence. And historically in India, devotees would spend large amounts to construct temples, but they themselves would live in very simple dwellings. So they were not interested in building comfortable dwellings for themselves, but they were interested in building opulent temples for Krishna. So we should always keep that in mind. If we do happen to live in an opulent temple, to always be cognizant that this facility is meant for Krishna and for Krishna's service and not for our materially comfortable life. Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, built a marble temple, Bagh Bazar, Gaudiya Math. But later he lamented that his disciples were fighting. Who will occupy this room? Who will occupy that room? Who will be the proprietor of this room? And he told our Srila Prabhupada at Radha Kund, near Radha Kund, that when we were living at Altadanga and collecting 200 rupees a month, we were living very happily. But now that we've got this big marble temple, the disciples are fighting over, who will get this room, who will get that room, who will be the proprietor of this room. And he said to Srila Prabhupada, if I could take the marble from the temple and print books, that would be better. And then he told Srila Prabhupada directly, if you ever get money, print books. So this is a very important instruction, which Srila Prabhupada took to heart. But Prabhupada not only printed books and saw them distributed in huge quantities, but he also did build temples. In the hope that his disciples would not fall into sense gratification with the facility, but use the facility to preach Krishna's glories. All materialistic men are mad after possessing all these material opulences, and this is known as the advancement of material civilization. But the result is that by possessing all these material assets, one becomes artificially puffed up, intoxicated by such temporary possessions. Consequently, such materially puffed up persons are incapable of uttering the holy name of the Lord by addressing him feelingly. O Govinda, O Krishna. It is said in the Shastras that by once uttering the holy name of the Lord, the sinner gets rid of a quantity of sins that he is unable to commit. Such is the power of uttering the holy name of the Lord. There is not the least exaggeration in this statement. Actually, the Lord's holy name has such powerful potency. But there is a quality to such utterances also. It depends on the quality of feeling. A helpless man can feelingly utter the holy name of the Lord, whereas a man who utters the same holy name in great material satisfaction cannot be so sincere. A materially puffed up person may utter the holy name of the Lord occasionally, but he is incapable of uttering the holy name in quality. This is a very significant point, because our whole process depends on our chanting of the holy name with feeling. Therefore, the four principles of material advancement, namely 1, high parentage, 2, good wealth, 3, high education, and 4, attractive beauty, are, so to speak, disqualifications for progress on the path of spiritual advancement. Now, these material assets, if they lead to our becoming intoxicated with false prestige, are zeros. In fact, in a way, they're minuses, but let's say they're zeros. But they can be used in Krishna service. And Srila Prabhupada gave the example that these assets are zeros. And 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 equals 0. But if you put a 1 in front of all those zeros, you get 1,000. And that 1 is Krishna. So when these assets are used in Krishna's service, they have value. But if not, then they're like the second canto of the Bhagavatam says, they're just like a turban on a drowning man that just causes him to sink faster. But still, without Krishna, this part of the purport is about without Krishna. Therefore, the four principles of material advancement, namely high parentage, good wealth, high education, and attractive beauty, are, so to speak, disqualifications for progress on the path of spiritual advancement. The material covering of the spirit soul is an external feature, as much as fever is an external feature of the unhealthy body. The general process is to decrease the degree of the fever and not to aggravate it by maltreatment. Sometimes it is seen that spiritually advanced persons become materially impoverished. Yes, there was a very interesting discussion. Maharaj Parikshit asked Shukadeva Goswami that Lord Vishnu is the husband of the goddess of fortune. He is the most opulent person. But often it is seen that his devotees are poor. And Lord Shiva lives like a poverty-stricken person. He doesn't even have a house. He just lives under a tree. Yet, although Lord Vishnu is the most opulent person, Lakshminath or Lakshmipati, the husband of the goddess of fortune, often it's seen that his devotees are poor. And although Lord Shiva is poverty-stricken and lives under a tree, often it is seen that his devotees are very opulent materially. So how to understand this contradiction? And Shukadeva Goswami referred this matter referred for the answer to a conversation that took place between Maharaj Parikshit's grandfather, Maharaj Yudhishthir, and Lord Krishna. Maharaj Yudhishthir asked Lord Krishna, why is it that your devotees are often put into distressful situations? Indirectly, he didn't say openly, but indirectly, he was referring to his situation. The Pandavas were cheated out of their kingdom. They were sent into exile. They suffered so many reversals. And Lord Krishna responded with a very important verse. Yasyaham anugrinami harishe tadanam shanai. So he says, whenever I am especially favorably disposed to a devotee, the first installment of my special mercy is that I take everything away from him. And then in that poverty-stricken condition, he is rejected by his family and friends. And he comes to the right conclusion of surrendering to Krishna and taking shelter of Krishna's devotees. So sometimes Krishna will arrange for his devotee to become a kinchana, and that is his mercy. So coming back to the purport. The general process is to decrease the degree of the fever and not aggravate it by maltreatment. Sometimes it is seen that spiritually advanced persons become materially impoverished. This is no discouragement. On the other hand, such impoverishment is a good sign, as much as the falling of temperature is a good sign. The principle of life should be to decrease the degree of material intoxication, which leads one to be more and more illusioned about the aim of life. Grossly illusioned persons are quite unfit for entrance into the kingdom of God. So our goal ultimately is to enter the kingdom of God and serve Krishna in one of the eternal relationships that devotees can have for him. But that is possible only when we give up our material attachments, or to put it in another way, only when our attachment for Krishna is stronger than any other attachment. And often transferring our attachment to Krishna begins with transferring our attachment to a devotee of Krishna. As stated in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, every learned man knows very well that attachment to the material is the greatest cause of bondage. But that same attachment, when transferred to a self-realized devotee, opens the door to liberation. So we cannot kill attachment or stop attachment, but we can transfer the attachment from material things to Krishna and Krishna's devotees. So the impersonalists try to stop all attachment, all thinking, feeling, desiring, which is not possible. But we can change the subject, change the content to thinking about Krishna, feeling for Krishna, desiring Krishna. And then those natural human psychological functions become spiritualized. And ultimately we become fit for going back home, back to Godhead. So when we chant, we should think of this verse and understand that we can chant with feeling when we feel helpless. The second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam says, Atma Saneshu, that the householder has his wife, children, and so on. And they are like soldiers. The Bhagavatam calls them fallible soldiers in our fight with the material nature. In this fight, we can't depend on these fallible soldiers of our, friends, family members, monetary assets, and so on. They will fail us. Only Krishna will not fail us. And so in our fight, in the war with Maya. We should take shelter of Krishna, and he will not fail us. And that is our process. And if we follow it as described by Queen Kunti in this verse, we will dive deep in Krishna consciousness and really relish the nectar of a pure devotional service to Krishna and his devotees. Hare Krishna. Jai. So are there any questions or comments? Oh, maybe before I end, although I sort of did end, I'll just speak a little bit about this special mercy. Yasyaham anugrinami harisheda danam shanai. Krishna says that, when he's especially favorably inclined to a devotee, the first installment of his special mercies, he takes everything away from the devotee. So Srila Prabhupada had a student. He wasn't initiated, but he had a student or a follower or admirer who was translating his books into Hindi. And one day, the young man with his father came to meet Srila Prabhupada in Delhi. It happened to be after the first Delhi Pandal, and I was there. And the fathers had a vice, a bad habit, you could say, of smoking. So when the father and son came to see Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada asked the father, have you given up smoking? And the father said, no, Srila Prabhupada, I haven't. I think I need some special mercy. And Srila Prabhupada says, special mercy, there is such a thing. And then he quoted, Yasyaham anugrinami harisheta danam shanai. That Krishna says, when I'm especially favorably inclined to a devotee, the first installment of my special mercy is that I take everything away from him. So, do you want special mercy? And the man said, no, Prabhupada, no, I'll do it myself. So yes, now we can take questions or comments. Yes, Nandini Radha. Please unmute. Nandini Radha, can you unmute yourself?
I'll do that.
We have to do that. That's Niti Parmar. Niti Parmar.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Our glories to Srila Prabhupada. Sorry, I could not unmute myself at that point.
Okay.
You mentioned a very nice analogy of Lord Vishnu and Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva is known to be very, very benevolent. He's known as Ashutosh. And people who please him, he bestows everything upon them. So is it possible for Lord Shiva to bless us with love of Godhead, because he himself is Lord Krishna's, one of the greatest devotees of Lord Krishna? Does he have the power to give us love?
Yes. I mean, there's the Rudra Sampradaya. He's like the first acharya in the Rudra Sampradaya. So we can pray to Lord Shiva to give us love for Krishna. And yeah, he's also in charge of false ego. And once His Holiness Sachinanda Swami traveled all the way to Kailash to pray to Lord Shiva to release him from false ego. But the two will go together. I mean, you can't love God if you're full of false ego. And if you become free from false ego, then you realize your constitutional position as eternal servant of Krishna. Thank you. Are there any other questions or
Yes,
comments?
Maharaj, we have a question from a YouTube.
Okay.
From Naman Kashyap. He says, Maharaj, can you kindly elaborate more on what it means to be attached to the devotees and how practically can it happen, especially for the devotees?
Well, by spending time with devotees, of course, the basic precondition is that one should want to become Krishna conscious. And an important part of Krishna consciousness is the association of devotees. And as I've quoted before, Srila Prabhupada said that Krishna consciousness is 90% association. And Rupa Goswami in the Upadeshamrita describes 6 exchanges of love, Priti Purvakam. And, they include giving charitable, dadati pratigrinati, giving charitable gifts and accepting gifts in charity. And bhunte bojayate chaiva, offering food and taking food. And guyam akiti prichiti, revealing one's mind in confidence and inquiring confidentially. So we can engage in these activities with devotees and, sadhi priti purvakam. These are the reciprocations of love shared among devotees. And so whether you live in the temple or not doesn't really affect the principle. You can visit the temple and engage in those reciprocations with devotees. You can invite devotees home and engage in those reciprocations with them at your place. But yes, those are very important. And as Srila Prabhupada said, the Krishna consciousness society is nourished by these 6 loving exchanges. So they're essential. And, whether you're a brahmachari in the temple or a grihastha at home, you can engage in those reciprocations and you can become attached to devotees. And that will slacken your attachment for material things. So I see 2 more hands, Preeti Radhika and Rohit Ahuja. Let's start with Preeti Radhika.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
So in the purport, you had read that somebody who is like materially satisfied may not chant with that much affection or devotion like a person who's in a helpless situation. And in my personal experience, like when I go through hard times, then my surrender is of a different level. My sadhana is of different level. My, like Vaisheshika Prabhu used to say that chanting with loving attention, I did not understand till I went through hard times. What did that really mean? But we know, as devotees, we know we actually are in a habu-dubu situation. Things go better. We breathe when we come out of the water, then we dunk in the water again. But when things get better, we lose that and sometimes we are mechanical. And so how do we retain that learning that I write somewhere, some places, like I maintain a diary and I write it and I try to go back. But what else can we do that actually chanting comes with affection?
Well, we should remember that we are always in a vulnerable position in the material world. Like you gave that example that Srila Prabhupada gave, that we're dumped underwater and then we come up, we gasp for some fresh air, and then we're dumped in the water again. That's like a type of punishment. But yeah, we should be aware that we are in a vulnerable position and that actually we don't possess anything. In one sense, we are all akinchana because we don't really possess anything. Everything belongs to Krishna. And if we think we possess something, that is an illusion. And if we're aware that everything belongs to Krishna, nothing belongs to me, then we won't have the sense of false proprietorship and false prestige. And we'll feel helpless and chant with feeling. So, yeah, but it's easy to get intoxicated because we're prone to that. But we should be sober and realize that we have nothing except Krishna. And chant in that mood.
Can I quickly ask another thing to that note? Like, so surrender, I was trying to dive deeper into the humility and tolerance and respect aspect of Trinadata Pisu Nichena. And in that, as I was reading the 6 limbs or items of surrender, there's humility also. So how does humility tie into surrender to making us surrender better?
Yeah, well, if you're humble and realize your dependence on Krishna, then it's easy to surrender to him. But if you're proud, you think, why do I have to surrender to Krishna? I can do well enough on my own. So yeah, humility is an essential part of Sharanagati, of surrender. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Rohit Ahuja.
Rohit, unmute yourself. Rohit, you can unmute yourself. Rohit
Hare
Ahuja?
Krishna.
Yes, please.
And sorry for the delay. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the wonderful class. Please accept my humble obeisances. My question is, or curiosity is, how can we increase our love for Srila Prabhupada, and how did Srila Prabhupada want us to be?
Um, well, you can increase your love for Srila Prabhupada by following his instructions. And how he wanted you to be is explained in his books. So I would say if you read his books and follow his instructions, your love for him will increase. And also, if you learn about him as a person, as you can from reading Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita or other books by his disciples, but Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita is special because it covers Srila Prabhupada from the beginning to the end, and it's written in a very beautiful way. You can also develop your love for him. In Juhu, when I was the temple president and Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita came out, many people came to me and said that they could never really understand Srila Prabhupada's books until they read the Lilamrita. And then they could understand Srila Prabhupada, and then they could understand the significance of his books. And then watching the videos of Srila Prabhupada. Yadubara Prabhu has a whole series called Following Srila Prabhupada. And if you see the series, you'll definitely become attached to Srila Prabhupada. So yeah, to know him is to love him. And you can get to know him through his books and through the books about him and through the videos we have of him. Yeah, please do that.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, there are a couple of questions on our YouTube from our YouTube viewers also, and from our temple hall as well. Can I ask them quickly, Maharaj?
Okay. Yeah. Come back to the ones on Zoom.
This question is being asked by Pavitra Hari Prabhu, and that how to build trust among devotees if there is unhealthy competition for results in preaching.
Well, in some contexts, Srila Prabhupada encouraged transcendental competition, but he did say that cooperation is a higher principle than competition. And once, when the competition in Chicago became very unpleasant, Srila Prabhupada said that if the devotees cannot maintain good feelings for each other in the course of transcendental competition and book distribution, then they should just stop the book distribution and sit down in the temple and chant and hear together. So he definitely didn't want the transcendental competition to create bad feelings among the devotees, to the point that he was ready to stop the book distribution just to allow the devotees to rectify their relationships with one another.
Thank you, Maharaj. There is another question by Subir Prabhu, that Krishna and his devotees are very compassionate and merciful. As a Grihastha, how do we understand this particular verse when we have so many responsibilities and we don't get affected by wealth given by Krishna?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
As a Grihastha, how do we understand this verse when we have so many responsibilities? Uh, and he has written further, and we don't get affected by wealth given by Krishna. I think he's asking how not to get affected
Yeah.
by wealth that is given by Krishna in a Grihastha ashram.
Well, Queen Kunti was in Grihastha ashram. What we're talking about is really a matter of the consciousness. And, if by Krishna's grace you get wealth, then you should use it in Krishna's service and not falsely consider it to be your property, but take it to be a facility offered to you by Krishna to enable you to do some service.
Maybe there are 3 hands raised here, Maharaj.
Okay.
Karuna, Direct. You can go ahead with your question. Karuna Mataji, please. You can
Sorry, I just put my hand, I started putting my hand down because Gomaj answered the question in the last one, but my question was similar in that I would like to know more about like sort of wealth, or once, I heard Gomaj saying that when Krishna sees, he may take, the special mercy is to take everything away, but when he sees that you're responsible in using the money in Krishna's service, he will start giving you more. And so it's to understand the management of it so that it's easy, there's a balance between one's own personal needs and using it in Krishna's service.
Well, the first premise is correct. In the story of Bali Maharaj, at first Krishna took everything away from him, and then he gave it back and more. So during the earlier part of the pastime, there are many verses and purports in which Srila Prabhupada comments that it was Krishna's mercy that he took everything away from Bali Maharaj. But in the end, when Bali Maharaj surrendered, Srila Prabhupada writes that was the real mercy. When Bali Maharaj surrendered, Krishna could give him everything back and more, and know that he would use it for Krishna. And as far as striking the proper balance between using money for our needs and for Krishna's service, we should live, what to say? We should place ourselves in a normal position for us. Someone, say maybe a brahmachari, he can live with less facility, and a grihastha may require more facility. But still, in general, we should live modestly, and we can be comfortable, but not extravagant, and save as much money as we can for Krishna service.
just a little, I think also the idea of Krishna taking everything away, that for me, that immediately gives, I think for most of us, like the man in the example of the cigarettes, it's like there's this idea of this being a very jarring, harsh experience. And perhaps there's some also way of looking at it where it's not as, where it's more gradual and it's more like helping you to give things up.
Well, I mean, Srila Prabhupada said that first Krishna tested him by taking everything away, and then Krishna tested him by giving him everything. And it's also said that Krishna will only take something away from a devotee to give him something better. So we should have that faith. Yeah, and I mean, we are in the world of duality, and we have our ups and downs, or our business has its ups and downs, our relationships have their ups and downs. But yeah, our true relationship is with Krishna, and our true security is in Krishna. And, as Krishna tells Arjuna in the Gita, tamshtitikshas vavarata, you have to tolerate these ups and downs because they will be there. We can't stop them. No matter how Krishna conscious you are externally, there will be ups and downs. Even in the Jew who struggle, Srila Prabhupada faced so many downs, so many obstacles, so many reversals. But he persevered and he was successful. So who's next?
Thank you, Maharaj, for your inspirational class. Maharaj, just I have one question. Actually, being we are in temple residents, myself, Sarvagi Damodar Das from Banjari. I want to ask, means, what are the practices you adopt, Maharaj? Because you go through the brahmachari life, sannyas, ashram, being with so many devotees. What are the various practices you adopt in your chanting, so that we can also improve our chantings or devotional services by this? Go deep in chanting.
Just as far as possible, chant early in the morning. I mean, for many years, until fairly recently, I lived in temples. And so, we would be at Mangala Arati at 4:30, and then after Mangala Arati and the Mangala Prayers and Tulsi Puja, we would chant japa. And it's good to chant with the devotees, as long as they're, serious about chanting, which they should be. And they don't disturb you while you're chanting. They don't become, as we say, japa terrorists. So then it's nice. It's nice to chant with devotees who are serious about chanting. But one thing, when you mentioned about remaining brahmachari, before I heard the end of your question, I thought of an instruction that Srila Prabhupada gave, that if you want to remain brahmachari, you should maintain good relations with everyone. So I used to think, what is the connection? And I thought of two. One connection is that we usually come in conflict with others when we're influenced by the modes of passion and ignorance. But if we're in the mode of goodness, then we tend to remain in good relations, keep good relations with everyone. And the other is that if we fight with devotees, we commit offenses. And one of the results of committing offenses is that you become affected by material desires. So I just thought that was a very good instruction. And even before hearing it, my nature or tendency was that I kept good relations with everyone.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Rukmini Krishna Das. So it's a wonderful enlightening class, Maharaj. Just on your last question, Maharaj, you have been the president of Juhu Temple, and we all know the kind of problems you all went through, the challenges you faced, and you're the president. And you said that you could maintain good relations also. So, being a president, managing all the devotees, it's a really hard task. It's a big challenge. So, can you give some few tips, Maharaj? Like while we are managing, sometimes committing offenses is a kind of occupational hazard. Sometimes it's unavoidable. So, if you can please enlighten us, Maharaj, on that.
Yeah, I mean, just feel yourself to be the humble servant of the servants of the servant. And, even if you make a decision that a devotee doesn't like, but if they see how sincere you are in your desire to serve Srila Prabhupada, then they'll accept it by and large. Yeah, I mean, I was told quite early on, and it was a good bit of advice, that the way we control the devotees is by preaching. In other words, by convincing them that it's in their interest to cooperate, which it is. So, yeah, but those would be my little bits of advice.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
There's still two hands up that I see, Malati Dasi and Radha Priya Dasi, who's under the name of Reshma Singh. Let's start with Malati Dasi.
Thank you so much for your wonderful class. I have a question. While Krishna is testing you, know that Krishna is doing the best for you by the way of your purification, or Krishna loves you more, or he wants you to be closer to you. But then sometimes the pain is
sometimes the audio is not so clear. Is there something you can do to?
Is it okay now, Guru Maharaj?
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay. I'll get back again to the question, or
Yes, start from the
continue.
beginning. Start from.
Okay, Guru Maharaj. While Krishna is testing you, you know that Krishna is doing the best for you in the way that he's purifying you, or he loves you more, he's getting you more closer to him. But then sometimes the pain is stretched to so much that you cannot bear that pain. and then you feel that the prayers come out from your heart that please Krishna, give me a break for some time. It's like so hard taking this pain. So but that time, how should you act? Like I understand that tate anukampam, like you have to earnestly wait for Krishna's mercy and patiently bear the pain. But still, that time, you have to imbibe all the qualities of a devotee when you're facing so much. So I just want to know, how should we act in that very moment?
Well, you yourself gave the example. I mean, that verse, Tatenu Kampamsu Samikshamana, is perfect. So why don't you follow your own prescription? It was a perfect prescription. Yeah, and take shelter of the holy names. Yeah, I mean, sometimes we react because of our mental conditioning, but if we take shelter of the holy names, then that should help purify our hearts, Cheto Darpano Marjanam, and help us see things in perspective. Tate Nukampam. I mean, there's a saying, I think even His Holiness Sridhar Swami quoted it. If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, there's another question on YouTube, which has been asked by Akash Prabhu. He asked that sometimes due to our insincere attitude in bhakti, our teachers may get externally angry or disappointed with us for our benefit. So how can we understand that it is their mercy with a proper attitude and be a better devotee? That we understand that their mood philosophically, but emotionally it shatters us.
Well, it reminds me of an incident in June, very early. Very, very early. And a devotee, Malati Devidasi, she's senior to me, she reported to Srila Prabhupada that the deities were being neglected. And Srila Prabhupada wrote such a heavy letter. And he said, this is an abominable affair. And I was shattered, I was shattered. And so I wrote Srila Prabhupada. I mean, I tried to summon my consciousness in spite of the fact that I was so distraught. And then Srila Prabhupada wrote back a very nice letter. Let me find it in my book. Okay. So I'll read this little excerpt. To protect the deities and their paraphernalia, a devotee stood guard all night. But one night in April, the devotee on duty fell asleep and some thieves slipped under the canvas and stole the deity's crowns and flute. There was no door. The pandal was really just a tent. Because we didn't really have anything at that stage, so we made like a temporary pandal. So the robbers had just walked in, stepped over the sleeping brahmachari, taken the flute and crowns, and left. When Prabhupada heard about the incident, he wrote me, "I have got some reports that the deities in Bombay are being much neglected. This is most abominable affair. Radha and Krishna should never be neglected or left unprotected. So I'm wondering what you have done to rectify the situation. I have heard that Madhuvisa intervened to get the deities a better place. So he has done nicely." My mind was reeling. I was shaken to the core that Prabhupada had criticized me so severely, saying that the deities were neglected and calling the situation abominable. Still, I tried to maintain my spirit and formulate a proper reply. So then there's a little discussion about that. And I have to find his letter. Okay, here it is. I was affected by all the criticism from the other devotees, and most of all from Prabhupada himself. And Prabhupada, understanding my heart, in his next letter, explained his service to me in such a way that I could appreciate his criticism, which was clearly meant for my benefit. Actually, he wrote, it is the duty of the spiritual master to find fault with his students so that they may make progress, not that he should always be praising them. So if you find some criticism, kindly accept it in that spirit. I am only interested that you, along with all my other students, should become Krishna consciousness. And then I say his words and sincere desire acted upon my heart and influenced me to improve my efforts. So yeah.
And thank you, Maharaj. Well, there's another question by Akshay Prabhu. And he says, when we are away from the devotees, we usually develop respect and we feel separation. But why we are unable to maintain that respect and separation when we associate on a regular basis with devotees?
Yeah, I think the problem comes when we forget that they're devotees. When you're separated from them, you realize the value of their association as devotees. But as it is said, familiarity breeds contempt. If we become too familiar and start seeing them as ordinary people and not as devotees, then we may develop that offensive mentality or contemptuous mentality. So yeah, we should always appreciate the devotees. And I often suggest that if someone is failing to appreciate the devotees sufficiently, they should go out on book distribution and see what the non-devotees are like. And then after they experience that, they'll appreciate the devotees.
Thank you, Maharaj. And there's another question that how can we deal with constant fear since there are so many casualties around? Uh, Casualties around. Even when we chant, it's like fear is taking over love for Krishna.
What do you mean? Like
Uh,
spiritual casualties?
Now, the material casualties in the world that they are happening around us. So even
Oh,
when we chant, fear seems to take over the love for Krishna.
well, your chanting is your time with Krishna, and you shouldn't be distracted by other thoughts. And those thoughts are pretty useless because you can't do anything about those casualties anyway. I mean, you can take precautions so you don't become a casualty, but all the other casualties are done. You can't do anything about them. And Srila Prabhupada says that fear comes from worrying about the future. But then he says a devotee has no fear because his future is very bright. So in Bhagavad Gita 10:4 and 5 purport, he writes, fear is due to worrying about the future. A person in Krishna consciousness has no fear because by his activities, he is sure to go back to the spiritual sky, back home, back to Godhead. Therefore, his future is very bright. Others, however, do not know what their future holds. They have no knowledge of what the next life holds. So they are therefore in constant anxiety. If we want to get free from anxiety, then the best course is to understand Krishna and be situated always in Krishna consciousness. In that way we will be free from all fear. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 11.2.37, it is stated, Bhayam dviti bine vistasyat. Fear is caused by our absorption in the illusory energy. But those who are free from the illusory energy, those who are confident that they are not the material body, that they are spiritual parts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and who are therefore engaged in the transcendental service of the Supreme Lord, have nothing to fear. Their future is very bright. So, the cure for fear is Krishna consciousness. And by allowing one's fears to overtake one when one is chanting, and therefore to allow his fears to be an obstacle to his progress in Krishna consciousness, is contradictory. It's the opposite of what you need. So my simple advice was just chant and be happy. Don't be afraid.
Thank you, Maharaj. And there's one hand raised by Reshma Singh. Prabhu, Mataji, if you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my obeisances. You were speaking about false ego and humility early on in your class. And I was just wondering that how do you preach to somebody who's on that level of false ego, in that state of pride, when a person feels they're in control of everything? How do you help them get off that platform and become more humble?
Well, Srila Prabhupada would quote Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati, his method of preaching, which he said we should also adopt. And Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati says, Dante nidaya trinakam padayor nipatya. That means I take the straw in my teeth. That's like a sign of abject humility. Dante nidaya trinakam padayor nipatya. And I fall at your feet. And Dante nidaya trinakam padayor nipatya satam krita kritva bhavumine. And I flatter you 100 times. So when you do that, the person generally becomes interested to hear what you say. They think, oh, this person is really perceptive and appreciates my wonderful qualities. And then, hey, Sadhava, oh, sadhu, oh, great personality, hey, Sadhava, sakala eva vihaya duram. Whatever you have learned, cast it far away, kick it off. Dante Chaitanya Chandra Charanam Kurutanu Raga, and just become attached to Lord Chaitanya. So yeah, sometimes we have to adopt that method of flattering them to begin with, and then we come to the conclusion that just forget all that stuff and surrender to Lord Chaitanya. I mean, that's a general approach. Of course, we could fine-tune it for specific cases.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah, when you flatter them, they become very eager. Like, oh, what, you're flattering me so much, you're appreciating me so much. Yes, yes, what do you want to say? I want to hear what you want to say. Say, whatever you've learned, kick it far away. Just become attached to Lord Chaitanya. Okay.
Maharaj, there is another question by Piyush Prabhu. He's asking, it seems that it is easier to find people to preach to and seniors to learn from, but difficult to find devotee friends with whom to have a close relationship with.
Well, that's a good question, because he understands the need for all three. In fact, that is the quality of a Madhyam Bhakta. Premi, Maitri, Kripopeksha. Prema, he gives his love to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Maitri, he makes friendship with devotees. Kripa, he shows mercy to the innocent by preaching to them and engaging them in devotional service. And Upeksha, he avoids the envious, neglects the envious. I mean, having friends is a very important part of Krishna consciousness. And, I don't know the particulars of the situation, but it would seem that there's always possibility to have friendships with devotees. And then those friendships are nourished by those 6 loving exchanges we discussed. Dadati pratigranati guyamakati prichate bhungte bojayate chaivas sadbi priti lakshana. So yeah, I don't know, maybe I have to make more of an effort.
Shri Maharaj, he continues that as soon as we come in the way of the other person's material or spiritual gain, it's difficult to stay bonded. While I try my best to maintain an attitude of servant, I sometimes wonder how one can satisfy the need of such association.
Well, why should you come in the way of their spiritual advancement, their spiritual progress? I mean, I wouldn't want to have someone as a friend who was getting in the way of my spiritual progress. I don't think that's a very good thing to do. Material, I don't think in general, it's probably not a good idea to come in the way of someone's material progress either. Because what is material? If their progress is used in Krishna's service, then it's not material anymore. So yeah, I think encourage your friends' progress. Don't discourage it. And then they'll want you to be their friend.
Thank you, Maharaj. Maharaj, there is another question. How to accept shelter of holy name in difficult situations rather than dealing with the issue? Sometimes we forget about taking shelter and all attention is on dealing with the issue. In such a scenario, how can we take shelter of holy names?
Well, even if we want to deal with an issue, and we have to sometimes, of course, we need Krishna's mercy to be able to deal with it properly and to get a good result. And to get Krishna's mercy, we want to chant his holy name. That's one of the basic ways that we approach Krishna for his mercy. So the two should not be in opposition to each other, but they should be complementary to each other. They should work together. Yeah, don't keep Krishna or the holy name out of the equation when you're trying to deal with issues.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Can I ask a question? I have a question, Maharaj. From your talk, on this very nice verse. Hare Krishna. Yeah. So the essential aspect of diving deep in Krishna consciousness, what I could understand was to chant with feeling. And to chant with feeling, I have to be feeling helpless. So when the going is bad, okay, sometimes the things are not going as per our wish, we feel helpless. But sometimes when the things are going as per we feel we are the controllers. So how to always remain in this state, Maharaj? Only then we can go deep in Krishna consciousness.
Yeah. I think we have to realize that, again, we are in a vulnerable position in the material world, and the only shelter is Krishna and the holy name and Krishna consciousness. And that our success in any endeavor depends on Krishna's mercy. yeah, that we're dependent on Krishna, and we're happy to depend on Krishna. We don't want to be in any illusions that we're like the controllers or the proprietors or the enjoyers. But we're happy to be Krishna's servant, and we're happy to work under his protection and with his mercy.
Sorry.
I was just thinking of the verse toward the end of the Bhagavad Gita in which Krishna says, in all activities and for their results just depend on me and work always under my protection. It's a very good advice.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. It was really helpful. So, Premanjan, are there any questions left on the YouTube?
And not on YouTube, they are complete. Perhaps in Zoom, this meeting. There's a question in the chat box from Vijay Lakshmi.
Can you read that, please?
As you described that devotees of Lord Krishna are materially poor, but in case of Sudama, when he approached Krishna with devotion, he made him rich. So how do I understand this?
As I mentioned earlier, and as Srila Prabhupada said about himself, Krishna tested him first by taking everything away and then by giving him everything. And in the case of Bali Maharaj also, Krishna took everything away and then he gave him everything, including himself. In the case of Sudama Vipra, he had no material desire, but Krishna gave him everything. But Sudama was very wary of forgetting Krishna in his materially opulent position. And, he prayed to Krishna to give him the benediction that he would not forget Krishna in the midst of all the opulence. And Krishna gave him that benediction. So that's like the condition. Devotee may not want opulence. The Lord may want him to have opulence. And the devotee can accept it in the spirit of service to the Lord on the condition that he won't forget the Lord in his opulent condition. So Krishna is very personal in his dealings with his devotees. What he gives them, what he doesn't give them, what he takes from them, what he gives them back. He's very sensitive in his dealings and very personal, and he does what's best for his devotee. Whereas Lord Shiva's, we heard he's Asutosh, he's very easily pleased. And this, he can give benedictions that in the end are not good for the person whom he benedicted or for others. Because he's not, in that way, he's not so considerate. Krishna's considerate. And he won't give you anything that's not good for you. And if he takes something from you, it's only to give you something better.
Thank you, Maharaj. There is one last question in the chat section by Madan Mohan Priya Mataji. Dandavat Pranam Maharaj, thank you for the inspiring lecture. As a practitioner of sadhana bhakti, it is sometimes difficult to practice while in a state of so much anxiety. What can be done in that case?
It is difficult to practice when you're in too much anxiety. But why should you be in so much anxiety? We just read about fear and anxiety. Maybe I need to read it again. I don't know if she heard it.
Maybe she can respond, Madan Mohan Priya Mataji. If you are here, you can unmute yourself and interact.
Hare Krishna, Dhanutna Maharaj. Yes, Maharaj, I have heard it. I have heard it, so no need to repeat it.
So then why would you be in anxiety?
Maharaj, actually the answer that you gave to one of the Mataji regarding fear, so that answered my question. Actually, I wrote it previously. So your answer, it also answered my question in regards to fear. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. It was really, we are totally, fully blessed by your association. And we are looking forward to have your physical association also here. We are praying to we have a deities called Maharaj, Radha Radhika Raman and Krishna Balram, if you remember. So I'll praying at the end of this week to have your association as early as possible. And,
Wow.
To all the, yes, Maharaj.
I have a small Radha Krishna deities called Radhika Raman.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you. Yeah. And we have all the books of Maharaj in our gift shop in Punjabi Bagh. The copies are very limited. And the special edition is the latest book by the Maharaj, on which Maharaj has worked very hard, and has very wonderful stories, historical account of Juhu temple, how the land was acquired, what kind of struggle Prabhupada went through, what kind of hardships Maharaj went through, and how Maharaj personally saw Prabhupada struggling to get that land, temple constructed, and so on. So it is a kind of a outpour of love from Maharaj. It's a kind of an offering to Prabhupada on his 125th birth anniversary. So if devotees want to have this book, we have a limited copies in our gift shop, and other books also, Watering the Seed, Many Moons, Life's Final Exam, and Watering the Seed, we have Hindi edition also. So those who want these copies can immediately contact our gift shop and get their copies. And Maharaj, personally, I'll be waiting for you to get my copy signed by you. Plus, I had Watering the Scene personally signed by you. So I look forward to that moment when I can get your blessings in the way of signature.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so, thank you so much, Maharaj. You gave us so much of valuable time to us. And it was really very, very helpful. So that how to chant nicely and how much important is having devotees association, value their association, now to take them for granted. And familiarity breeds contempt. Always been careful. And thank you so much. Dhanavad Pranam, Maharaj.
Maharaj, we had contacted you for the photographs from Many Moons book. So thank you, Maharaj, for providing them. A few years back, we had put up in the ashram at various places.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Good. Nice.
So thanks to all the devotees, and thank you especially to His Holiness Giriraja Swami Maharaj. His Holiness Giriraja Swami Maharaj ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Anant Koti Vaishnava Vrind ki jai, Jai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Thank you.
Panchakalpa.